to call to order this October 7th meeting of the District Advisory Board of the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. And we are going to go right into our business items. And with that, I will turn the floor over to our facilitator, Chandra Emery, and I believe her helper, Amy Chase Herman. So Chandra, take it away.
Thank you. All right. Hi, I'm Chandra. It's good to be with you. I'm going to facilitate this meeting. I'm going to share again, as I have in the last couple of meetings, that my role is to encourage that all of your voices are heard and a full level of participation. And I see myself as the keeper of the structure of the meeting, which includes managing the time well and helping with forward movement in your discussion. So I'm going to launch right away today with bringing all of your voices in the room, all the members of the board. And so we're going to do two quick go-arounds. And the first one is, if you would share, just in popcorn style is fine, one word that reflects your energy right now.
How do you want us to report out? Do you want to call on people or do you want us to just jump in? Or
I'll do that. That's probably easiest. I'll call. Okay, Wilda, go for it.
Medium.
Medium.
Got a sore throat.
Oh, okay. Joel.
Hi, everyone. I'd say pretty steady. I just had an afternoon cup of coffee too, so that helps, but feeling pretty good.
Good. Ben.
Tired. It's been a long day.
Deborah.
I'm tired too. I had a very busy day.
Thank you. Okay, and Commissioner Savas.
A little bit tired myself, and normally I have my cup of coffee after I have my dinner. I haven't had either of the two. So.
Oh no. Okay. And Grover.
I'm ready.
Ready. Good. Okay. I think I checked in with everyone, right? Okay. Second go around. A quality I want others to see in me. What's an adjective that, you know, honest, caring, fair, hardworking, humble, something in that nature. Wilda.
Credibility.
Credibility. Thank you. Joel.
Boy, on the spot. How about empathetic?
Nice. Ben.
How about super handsome?
Deborah.
Reasonable.
Thank you. Commissioner.
Well, I'm stuck on two words. I really like to see fairness, being judicious. So just equality, equity.
Yeah. Equity. Nice. Okay. And Grover.
Equity and preparedness.
Preparedness. Nice. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. So the objectives are the same, to submit bylaws to the board of directors that match with their directive, that the membership of this board, the composition, reflect the population of the district. And so I'm going to recap. This is sort of, I'm going to just give you, I'm going to recap what's happened so far and make some points. And then I'm going to invite you to, by a series of quick questions, help me know what the focus of this meeting should be. And that will inform how I facilitate. So, and then from there will be ample room for the discussion that you all are to have. Okay. So the recap is that you've had a series of special meetings to amend the bylaws, and you did it. You agreed on a composition of this board that will reflect the population distribution of the district. And you agreed that that will be based on option 2, the map that Melina provided and shared last week. I want to share it at this point one more time. And I want to say that as I'm going through this recap, I'd like to hold comments and questions, but make room for those if it's necessary. I'm trying to really get to what the focus of the meeting is before having the discussion open up. All right, so I'm going to share my screen, and Melina, if there's anything you want to say, feel free about the map. Oh my goodness, I have to find it.
While you're looking, are we going to get the adjusted color maps? So those of us who are either colorblind or black and white printers can get better view of the maps?
Melina, will you speak to that? Are you able to?
Yeah, we'll send it out right after this meeting, and I can walk through you right now some of the changes that we made to the map based on your feedback last time, just to clear up some of those issues.
Thank you.
So, and I apologize. I really had this open and I'm not sure what's going on here. So let me.
Well, again, while you're waiting, my request is for future meetings, we get things in advance of the meetings as opposed to have new things exposed to us or provided at the meetings. There's really not a chance to prepare that way. So that's a specific request of NCPRD.
Yes.
So are you agreeing for NCPRD?
I'm acknowledging that that's what you're asking, but I'm also multitasking, which is.
I know. Well, while we're standing here, we don't need to just watch you work.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, I don't know, Amy, if it's possible for you to help me with the screen share. Do you have access to the email where you could call up the?
I can work on it. Yeah,
Okay.
you can do something else while I'm trying to find that.
Yeah, we can kind of proceed, and I apologize. I'm just kind of overwhelmed with trying to facilitate and find something that I thought was ready.
And Chandra, I also have the map too, so if I'm able
Okay.
to share my screen, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, that might be.
And Amy, I've made you a
fastest.
co-host in
Okay.
case you'd like to share your screen.
Okay, if you've got it at your fingertips, Melina, that would be great, and I apologize.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, let's do that.
So I'm sharing my screen now. Ellen, can you make me a co-host? All right, don't look at my messy desktop. All right, so, and don't look at that. Okay, so this is the map with the updates discussed from the last meeting. And so as Chandra mentioned, option 2 was chosen, the option that breaks the Oak Lodge area and the Oatfield area into north and south. And so what we did is we went ahead and made the colors more contrasting, and so that you can see the clear division between area 3 and area 1 with a darker red and a lighter orange. The other thing we also did for clarity purposes when printing out in black and white was we added these black borders, these black lines to highlight the different borders of the different sub areas. And so when you print it, those should print out and just be really visible to provide some more clarity. And then similar to last time also, the areas are numbered. So we have Milwaukee and it corresponds with this table over here. And so it's labeled and we have borders, and I hope this provides the needed clarity when printing. And thank you everyone again for your feedback and your input on the last map. Does anyone have any questions before I pass it back to Chandra?
Thank you for doing that.
Of course, thank you for your feedback, Grover.
Okay, thank you, Melina. All right, and at the last meeting, you also agreed that Chair Parks would coordinate with Kelly Brooks of the City Council to seek the city's blessing on your proposed change. And Wilda, do you have any update on that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I believe that's going to be on our city council agenda the third Tuesday in October. So what would that be? The 20th, I believe that is. So.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then you also, let's see, there was, I think you also agreed that Commissioner Savas would report on a limited basis to the board on last Tuesday. Do you have any comment on that you want to share, Commissioner?
Yeah, that was yesterday, late
yeah.
morning. I reported on basically everything you just reported on.
Okay,
The map, I didn't show the map, but that we agreed on the map with the geographic sub areas and the 11-member board proposal, and that we were discussing the appointment process and whether or not to do it, to expedite it, or whether or not to do or not to do the expediting of recruiting members to jumpstart the DAB. I tried to solicit some input from my colleagues, and they did not have anything to say. So I have no impetus one way or another. So I think it's really in our hands of what we kind of agree on, whether or not we want to continue on that conversation, slow it down. So I'll just leave it all to everyone. That's my
okay.
report.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. And then let's see, I have a couple more. You discussed, but did not complete your discussion at the last meeting, you, the board, about the selection process, including what I want to emphasize is the diversity matters and the selection committee. There's probably more to it than that. And then finally, I want to acknowledge that the selection process is important, and I'm basing that on how much discussion there was in a good portion of the meeting last time. Now, here's where I'm going to start to narrow, to ask you to help me know how to focus this meeting. Now, to meet the board's directive of amending the bylaws and having them approved by October 31st, you must, and there's a slide we're going to show to lay this out. The staff met with Amy and I and worked through how could we get this done. So we want to show you an illustration of that. And Melina, can you help me again with this? Is that possible? There you go. Okay. Thank you. Okay, yes. And so you can see that today's meeting, the October 7th, what the thought is that you will review and hopefully approve Article 3A of the bylaws. We're going to share that screen as well during the discussion. That is the section that addresses membership and the composition change. That leaves 2 more potential meetings, October 14th and 21st, to continue a discussion of the bylaws and then finally approve them. Importantly, this has to happen by the 21st in order to allow enough time for the BCC to review and approve. So wanted to give you a sense that you have a maximum of 3 meetings if needed, but you could also rely on, you know, one to 3 to accomplish the goal of the directive. Okay, so now we come to how the board will use the time tonight. And I'm going to ask you to make a collective choice about the scope of the discussion. So you have a deadline that's fast approaching and 2 meetings, including tonight's, in order to, within which to comply with the October 31st deadline. All right, so now if we would remove this screen share, I'm going to do a straw poll, and I have a few questions to ask you. And I want to say this, the challenge is you have staff who are working really hard to provide information and meet requests and help with the process, including doing some drafting and sharing information. You have the selection process that's important, and you have bylaws that are important. As a facilitator, it's important to honor your voices and perspectives, and time is short. So those are the challenges. And now I want to do 3 questions of a straw poll to see, to help guide how you spend the time tonight. Is there consensus, just by a show of hands, what's the level of support that meeting this deadline of October 31st is a priority of this board? And I want to say, is there anyone from staff who wants to speak to that before there's a vote? Scott, okay, yeah.
Well, yeah, thanks, Chandra. I think just as a reminder for everybody to try to help kind of frame up what you're asking the group right now, Chandra, is the board, as in the board of directors, the BCC, did direct that this process be completed and returned to them by October 31st. And so, as was just displayed on that timeline a couple of minutes ago, that leaves us a pretty short window. We've been working hard, and you've all been taking a lot of your time to meet and have extra meetings. So I would suggest that so let me back up. What I want to I think point out is that if the more that you all can accomplish in the next 3 weeks, essentially. So we've got three Wednesdays, including tonight. 3 Wednesdays through October 21st, in order for us to make the timeline of bringing some draft bylaws back to the board before the end of the month, because you have to work a few days out, ahead of the meetings and so forth. And that would be bringing it back to the board in the last week of October. So the risk that we run collectively if we don't bring something back to them is that then the board will then potentially be, I guess, feel that they need to make a decision about possibly finishing the bylaws themselves, or asking staff to do it, or whatever they may be. I don't speak for the board, but just that they asked for those by the 31st, and our county administrator has also been very clear that that's, he's asked us as staff to help follow that directive as to best we can and accomplish that. So the risk is, if we don't find a way to streamline to get to those bylaws being, in a place where they're essentially done, and I think Chandra's going to talk a little bit more about, what our options are there, then you all may lose the control to have the ability to complete that yourself. So I just want to empower you and motivate you to that original and still standing directive that we got from the board. So with that, I think Chandra's going to talk about some options and how we might get from here to there, and I'll be happy to kind of help interject along the way here.
Thank you, Scott. And I see Grover and Wilda. So I saw Wilda first. Go ahead.
It's important that I say at this point in time that a city meeting came up that I did not know that I would need to be at. And it's from the part that I have to be at is from about 5:45 until 6:15 on that third meeting date on the 21st. So what I would like to ask the group is, could we meet later that evening, meet at, say, 6:30? I'm sure that I can finish my other responsibilities in time to do that, rather than any other alternative, I guess.
Okay, and I'm noting that. I'd like to move the answer to that question to the end of the meeting.
Sure.
Based on
That's fine. I just felt that I needed to bring it up, and this seemed like
a good time,
an opportune time. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, and then Grover, yes.
Right. I just have a concern about the way you phrased it, that we're going to finish Article 3. And there are things that refer to how they're selected and the process, which are, since first of all, we don't have an agreed upon set of bylaws, one. So the drafted ones, they actually include in section 7 issues around the selection process as well. And second of all, to complete section 3, I don't know that we really are, I can't speak to, because what I said last time, and it's still true, there are pieces from the beginning to the end that are all still clearly up in the air. So to say we're going to complete a particular section, I can't support that, because that's not accurate.
Okay.
Now, supporting how to do the selection process, that I could get on board for. Okay.
All right, I'm taking in what you're saying. I'm going to go through my poll, the 3-part poll, and just to say, I think that will help you and others with making choices along the way, like the one you're bringing up. All right, so first straw poll is, what's your level of support for the proposition that meeting the board's directive and deadline is a priority for this group? That is submitting bylaws so they can approve by October 31st. Okay, I see.
No,
yes.
that's a question.
Okay, so let me do the vote and then we'll get through that and then.
I do not know what completing the bylaws means to you. You use that as a broad term and I had just laid out a whole lot of stuff. So do you mean to cover all of those things by then, if that's your question?
What I'm saying is, without knowing the answer to your question, is it something that you think is a priority? It may not happen, but is it a focus? Is it something that you want to work towards? Does that give you enough information to vote?
Working for it, sure.
Yeah, okay, so it's a priority. You all would like to make that happen. Okay, and I think I saw full support for that. Okay. Next is, am I correct to show your level of support for it is important for this board to have input and finally approve a form of amended bylaws by the 31st?
I'm sorry, this board or the district board?
This board, this DAB. It's important for you to have input and finally approve what gets submitted by the 31st. Is that, yes. Okay, yes, you're all saying you support that. Grover, did I see your hand? Okay, thank you. Okay, all right. And then finally, this is the third and final, and it does have two subparts. So then I'm getting to how do we spend this evening? Do you support, what's the level of support for limiting tonight's discussion to the bylaws? And then there's two parts to that. One is time for presenting the draft of Article 3A. And two is discussion of other sections that this board would like to consider revising as part of what they submit. So what's your level of support for limiting the focus of the discussion tonight to the amended bylaws? That means not discussing the selection process and so on.
I'm sorry, I think I need a little bit more clarification,
Okay.
Chandra.
Yes.
I'm confused as well. by what
Okay.
you said.
Well, let me try to speak plainly. I want to know if you are supportive, given that you prioritize this deadline and wanting to have input on the bylaws. Are you willing to commit this meeting to discussion of the bylaws exclusively and not the selection process and the committee? That's what I'm asking. Or is it important to be able to talk about the committee selection process as well?
Okay,
That's
so
part of the bylaws.
okay. So I think maybe what you're saying, correct me, Sean, if I'm understanding, is that last time we broached the topic of trying to expedite the selection process.
Right.
And so that's what you're saying versus going right to the bylaws.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Now I understand.
Thank you. Okay. Hopefully that helps others too. Any other questions about what the last straw poll is?
I think that helped clarify it for me. When you say selection committee, you're talking about the people that would work on selecting those new members to come in right away, right? So and not talking about that, but talking about the selection process. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm
Go
probably
ahead.
the only one that's confused.
No,
but
I don't.
I am
I
too.
doubt that. Go ahead.
Gonna
Go ahead,
figure it out a
Commissioner.
little bit, but
Okay.
yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I have a proposal for maybe reframing the question.
Yes, thank
Maybe
you.
The question should be, should we or should we not spend any time tonight on expediting the selection process for the applicants? Yes. or no?
Yes. So do you want to spend time on what Commissioner Savas just, if you do, then show of hands.
Yeah, we need to get people. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a mix, I think. Ben, are you scratching your head or voting? Okay. Okay. So you're, all right. So you do want to talk about the
Question.
selection process.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it for the selection process for this new round of members on the DAB? Because, and I'm sure Commissioner Savas will present this later at some other time, a language that may be about not the immediate new members, but future members. And I wouldn't want to exclude that. I think we need to be able to do that. And that's part of the bylaws. And we get into some fairly significant issues. But if tonight we're saying, okay, we don't need to talk about the process for the new members and not future members, then I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Can't say as I understood that.
What?
I didn't understand what you were specifically advocating for.
Well, I think we want to look at how future members, not the ones that will immediately replace us, but in the future, to make membership more inclusive, more diverse, more grassroots, and though that would be language in the bylaws.
I still don't get it.
Yeah,
I think
Maybe if we just proceed,
mhm.
we'll see how that plays out.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Amy, do you have something to offer here?
Well, I just wanted, I want to sort of tease this out a little bit. You've got an active recruitment process going on, which is explained in the bylaws, and you've got an existing set of bylaws that are functioning right now for you. So you have to look at those in order to really guide what you're doing with the selection process this year. You also have an aspiration to amend the bylaws and have the language look differently. And that's work that the board's going to be doing moving forward. But because
Yeah,
you don't have, well, the DAB's going to be doing moving forward, right? So if you're going to continue to look at some of the aspects of the bylaws that the new DAB is going to be revisiting, that can be work you do in your board meetings as you meet month to month. But the bylaws themselves that are in place now are what are guiding this year's selection process. It may be different next year, but they haven't been approved yet.
Right, but if we accept let's say the selection process that's currently in the bylaws, then are we precluded, or any future group precluded, from changing that selection process?
No.
Well, the bylaws are, I mean, they are a living document. They're a guiding framework for you. And then if you've got things that you consider policies and procedures that you work with along the way, that's going to really be supported by the bylaws and can't contradict them. But the bylaws are going to be wide, general enough so that they can be that architectural structure, that supporting structure for all of your rules and agreements. So the selection process itself doesn't have to be completely described in the bylaws, but whatever you decide to do with it as a procedure needs to agree with what your concept is in the bylaws. And right now you're functioning under whatever language is in the bylaws right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, Wilda, you started to answer Deborah's question. You said no.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I started to answer it, but I thought that makes sense to me. I mean,
Okay.
and I understand that we are functioning because nothing at this moment, nothing in the bylaws has been changed. The other thing, and it's already kind of created a couple of different times of confusion when we're talking about board. One of the things that early on we decided as a group would be to change the name of this from the District Advisory Board to the District Advisory Committee. And I'm just wondering if it would be simpler and easier to understand if we began to refer to it that way, so that when we say committee, we know it's talking about the DAC. When we say board, we're talking about the county board.
Okay.
And that's just my thought at the moment, because it's already
Okay.
come up a couple times.
All right, so support for Wilda's proposal on switching to the language to committee for purposes of this meeting anyway. I see Grover's hand up. And then I see Ben scratching his head, no, voting. Okay, and Commissioner, okay, good, okay, yeah, so we'll do that and that might help clarify. Okay, and Grover, you have a question or comment?
I just wanted to clarify what has been said in the last little bit here, and particularly what Amy had to say. So our charge by the Board of County Commissioners is to redesign the bylaws such that it will accommodate what they said, which is accurately reflect the proportional representation of the district. And that's what we're working on. So the existing bylaws prior to us beginning this task, they exist, but they're over there. But what we need to do and have done quite a lot of work is to design a new set. And it's the new set that we want to focus on how, one, because we're redesigning how many people are going to be on, and two, where they come from, and now three, how are they selected? And that will affect the next iteration of this district advisory committee that will be selected through a selection process. But who they are and how they're selected is what we had a lot of conversation about last time. And we have, that's what I think we're focusing on now. And since then till now, I have over 80 people who have signed a petition to be very clear that the unincorporated people, and that was only in the last 70 hours, that the unincorporated representatives need to not be selected by other bodies. That's the issue we've been dealing with for the last 30 years. It is they need to be selected by people who represent and are part of the unincorporated. So that's the part I want to be clear about, is on the table, and there's a lot of people listening in that are supporting that, and that's needs to be in our discussion about how the next group is.
I'm going to frame what you said, I think, as a proposal so that maybe it's a good, useful for going forward.
Okay.
But Commissioner Slavis, do you want to comment before I do that?
Yeah, I'm thinking because of a lot of interest came out of our last meeting a week ago. So I've received a lot of input, and I've talked to a number of people that have reached out and vice versa. And I think maybe for tonight's efficiency, maybe what we could do is, this is a proposal. Maybe what we could do is work on 3A as far as finish that. And then and save some time at the end of the meeting today to discuss whether or not we want to move forward on expediting the seating and selection of the newest members under one or two, three scenarios. Number one, we could do it as it's written in the existing bylaws, which has been done by staff. We could do it under the method of which we agree to and refine tonight. Okay, it's too early to do that. Or we could come up with another once in a lifetime or just an ad hoc kind of a selection committee that we can agree on to get us to expedite or not expedite at all. But I think because of the conversation, and Grover kind of mentioned it a little bit, I didn't know about the 80. That's interesting to hear. And Deborah kind of touched on it too. I think we need to tweak and finish this out, because what we've done by kind of adopting the sub areas is we need to get the word sub area in there. And the way the sub area was originally designed to work, and which Milwaukee has followed very well, was that the city, being the sub area, one of the original sub areas, selects their members. And so now that we have an established map of the sub areas, geographic map of the sub areas, it would seem that if we go back to that original concept, that there is a substantial role for the sub area committees, which don't exist yet, but could be, do the selecting for their members. So I think that's something that I think we can get at in the next hour, and then come back in the tail end. I
All
did
right.
have my hand up way earlier when we were talking, and I just want to just touch on one thing. So
Okay.
putting all that aside for a moment.
Yeah.
Scott, when you put the timeline up, and I forgot what day, October 27th, the charge was not to come back before the board on October 27th or 8th, and not meet on October 28th. I thought it was just have the work done by October 31st. So I think we have actually one more Wednesday in there, the way I see it. And if we don't have that Wednesday, or there's a meeting conflict, we could have our meetings go an extra hour, some here and there as needed, if we think that we need a little bit more time. But I am committed to getting these bylaws completed. And I think we've burned up about 30 minutes so far. I'd certainly like to get moving on it, frankly.
I feel that. I feel the energy, and I there's a lot of energy about talking about the selection process. So I think what I'd like to do at this point is let's check out how resolved you are on Article 3A, and then make decisions from there about the rest of the meeting. Okay. So I'm going to pull up. So Article 3A, you've all read, and I don't know, Scott, if this was shared already, but this is, was it shared before this meeting, the language that you recently, okay. So I'm going to put up on the screen Article 3 language that I think staff believes reflects the agreement you've already made, and give you a chance to read it and discuss it. All right, and here we go. Sorry, 1 second here. Okay. I know, Melina, you're ready to help me, aren't you? In case here I go. Okay, let me get to Article 3A. And we can go back to 1 and 2 and see if there's consensus on that too.
At what point do you want comment?
Has everyone had a chance to read it? Is there anyone who needs more time?
I object to having this thrown here and I have to come up with a quick response to it. I again reiterate, there's no reason we couldn't have had this earlier than just now. I'm just letting you know. So no, I have not read it and I'm not ready to go on.
So
Okay.
if we were to go, is everyone okay? We just went line by line.
Yeah, and I want to speak to what, just to acknowledge, Grover, you would really like to have this information ahead of time, have time to digest it, and not have it thrown on you in a meeting.
That's
And
true.
yes, and I think we're the balance of that. I think I can speak for staff in having been at planning meetings with them, is the time pressure of really trying to accomplish this, have a good process, be responsive to you. So I think, yes, they would like to provide this ahead of time, and it's a matter of capacity, I think, rather than not wanting to share it. And now, Commissioner, we want to go line by line. Is it's short. Let's do that. I worry about doing that through the whole bylaws, but let's do that for this part. Grover, are you willing to go along with that exercise?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, if I may then, I just want to reflect the conversation, if I can, that the Board of County Commissioners, sitting as the Board of NCPRD, discussed, and staff discussed here, there, and everywhere, as well as the county administrator, who's also the district administrator, is that I think what we decided to do was to be silent on, whether on elected officials or a city council person or a county commissioner and all of that. I think we kind of agreed to just remove that language in there and leave it as it was, as far as, again, a council person or a county commissioner. And I think the Board of County Commissioners agreed a county commissioner shouldn't be on there, and so on. So for under A1, is that a 1 or an I?
I, little I.
It's an I, okay. So I guess the recommendation would be to be 2 members from the city of Milwaukee chosen by the city. And that's it, I think. I'm gonna see 1 non-elected yeah. So that's what 2 members from the city of Milwaukee chosen by the city.
Right, but that's changing it from being, it used to be 1 would be chosen by the city and by the city council, and they don't have to be a city council person. They're just chosen by them and they're free to choose a city council person. But the other is somehow still has to go through the selection process to be approved by the BCC.
That's not what this group determined, and there's never been another specified city representative. It's been this side of the freeway, and they could possibly live in the city. It's the first time, having been on there, it's the first time that position's gone to someone who lives in the city. What we had agreed upon is two people from Milwaukee chosen by the city, and 8 in the unincorporated areas, 4 groups, and 1 from the community centers chosen by the community center that exists at this point in time.
When did we make that agreement? I'm sorry, I must have been asleep.
That's what we've,
I believe that's what I remember from the prior meetings of this series, is what.
Then I must have been asleep.
certainly been my recollection.
Yeah, well, I think if we get to, let's just go to the next line, and I think maybe it would help balance things out. And this is a proposal that I've got from all the discussions that came out of the last Wednesday's meeting, and that is line 2 would read 8 members who are representatives or residents of unincorporated areas within the district will be selected by the sub areas if they in parents if they exist, and or by the selection process.
But that isn't what it says on what we're looking at.
I know. That's my proposal. That's why I said it's a proposal here, and that would give Milwaukee their right to select their folks, and it would give the unincorporated area their right to select their folks.
Okay, I think I'm gonna, are there other comments so far on this Article 3A?
Yeah, I want to read what we were sent just by the by the staff just recently. It says, as set forth in the IGA, little I says 2 members from the city of Milwaukee, including, it did say city council person, but we already discussed we wanted to leave that silent, and non-elected. It doesn't say they're selected by, it just says they are coming from there. And this added chosen by the city is an addition that was not there before, and it changes the definition by putting chosen by the city.
It's Grover, I'm sorry, but it's always been discussion about those 2 would be selected by the city.
Not in writing. Just look at what they sent you.
What we received in writing didn't have a lot of the things that we'd agreed upon or not agreed upon or whatever. So I think we're at the moment that we're in is where we need to be.
Right. I object to chosen by the city.
Why?
Yeah.
Well, there's a selection process. All right, let me rephrase that. If in fact, little 2 will be chosen by the sub areas, then I withdraw my objection. But I don't know that we're there yet. So the 2
Who
are
from the
actually
sub
together.
areas is qualified to select somebody? You guys,
I'd
if
be
you're
happy to answer that.
unincorporated, are you just going to call up
Would you like me to
Bobby
hear?
Joe
Would you
and
like to hear the
Joanne
answer, or are you going to
like
tell me why it
2
isn't
people?
true?
So, okay, so I'm going to stop screen sharing for a second because I want, just based on the energy, it's okay. Okay, so I think it's important to get clear on, there's what you've already agreed on, and there's what the bylaws say. And Amy described, I think the bylaws do not have to have all these details, just as a matter of what bylaws are supposed to are required to do, right? So and I'm sort of aware, my energy is about the risk of you accomplishing your purpose versus, doing something that doesn't accomplish your purpose. That's what's on my mind. So would somebody, if you're ready, make a proposal about the bylaws, this section that is more at that high level, that might get you out of these details that can be addressed elsewhere? I see Joel, yes.
Yeah.
I just want to ask a clarifying question here. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little confused. The
Sure.
emotions are running a little too hot, but
Yes.
back to Paul's point about double I guess.
Okay.
And just so I understand you, Mr. Chavez, that even if we don't have defined sub-area organizations or entities, you're suggesting verbiage that would allow for them to select. But in absence of those entities, they would go through the more traditional county selection process. Is that right? Because if that's what you're saying, I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I'm just trying to clarify it, and I kind of lost my thoughts. So
yeah. So let me clear. I'll go through this carefully here. So that's why I put there. I mentioned being in parents or in parentheses. If a sub area advisory committee exists, then the sub area advisory committee selects their folks, similar to the city choosing their folks. Okay. If the sub area advisory committee does not exist, then they would go through a selection process similar to what we have already worked on in draft form.
thank you. That's what I thought I had understood you to say, but I got lost in the crossfire. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good question.
All right. So I think when staff and Scott prepared this, we assumed that it was probably the easy part about the bylaws, and there's a lot of discussion. So I want to back off and figure out the way forward. And it seems like looking at that maybe is not useful. Grover.
Okay, thank you. I just want to reiterate what Paul just said, because
Okay.
in fact, and I want to be clear when we're talking about, I don't want to refer to for any of our conversation unless we say the former bylaws. The bylaws that are in play that we just had sent to us this week from NCPRD, those bylaws do have, in fact, in section 7, the ability to have a nominating subcommittee where there's 2 members from the Clackamas County staff, 2 members from the DAC, and 2 representatives of the community planning organizations within the district. And it just so happens that 3 of the 4 sub areas have active community planning organizations. And I'm not talking in the long run, because in the long run, we're actually talking about resurrecting the idea of having parks boards in each of those areas. But to get from point A to point B and actually have people who are selected by the people who live in those areas, who are already active in their community, that would be a great move forward in addressing the issue that we wouldn't be having these conversations if a lot of people weren't concerned that the distribution of resources within NCPRD have not taken into account the sub areas of unincorporated. And that is clearly why we're even here talking. That's what caused that to happen. And we can't ignore it going forward. Thank you very much.
Are you saying, Grover, that those specifics must be addressed in the revised bylaws and the amended bylaws?
I'm saying that'd be the method for choosing the next group of people who will sit on the district advisory committee.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and here's the important part, and lots of people are listening to this, the important part is that the people who live in unincorporated are represented by people who are chosen by unincorporated, not by the previous methods that have chosen up until now. And each and 3 of the sub areas have active people on this call, CPOs that have people that they could select that are in the existing applicants. And we still haven't heard if all 4 areas have enough applicants, but that's a different topic.
So let me just say, it sounds to me like you've been working on the bylaws for a really long time, and there was a pause there. And now the terms are up and you have to go through an election process, and you have existing bylaws that dictate how that's going to happen. These bylaws you're working on now are not going to come into play until they're approved.
Correct. And the DAB won't start meeting until they're approved either. So we're both in agreement on that.
Okay, so you're functioning under the existing bylaws in order to
No,
make the selection.
No, you keep
That's-
saying that, and I want you to, those have nothing to do with it. The DAB will not meet until the BCC approves bylaws. That was the mandate. So you can't keep talking about the old ones. The old ones are the old ones. Our job is to come up with new ones, and there won't be a DAB until new bylaws are approved by the BCC, whoever writes them.
Okay, but so what you're saying, Grover, is that the bylaws that are in effect right now, essentially this group, this DAC, has no bylaws. Is that what you're saying right now? They
No,
have
we're
no
writing new
bylaws.
ones. No, it's not that we do or we don't. Our job, we're a task force here specifically designed to write new bylaws that says to achieve the DAB member composition, amend the bylaws to achieve the NCPRD Board of Directors stated goals, which is accurately reflecting the proportional representation of the district. That is our assignment.
Yeah, and you have bylaws
So we're not
now.
working under any bylaws for that. We only have one task. We're not doing normal normal DAB things. We're not entertaining any other topics. Only writing bylaws.
I want to just know if that's just Grover's perspective or if other people are in agreement that you're not functioning under the existing bylaws right now.
No, we are.
For the processes process of.
Yeah.
Of,
So show of hands if you agree that you are not operating under the existing bylaws right now. You are
Not
not.
operating any bylaws.
Okay. Show of hands if you believe that you are operating under the existing approved bylaws.
The existing, not existing approved by the committee. The existing bylaws.
The existing bylaws, yes.
Yeah.
Show of hands. Okay. Sort of. Ben says sort of, and commissioners, wait, see if he's coming back. And then
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm listening, and I think take the vote, and I think I have a different interpretation of where we are.
okay, so show of hands, this board, this committee is operating under the existing you're bound right now by the existing bylaws. Show of hands.
As
So I
far
see
as us being the DAC or DAB and
Mhm.
working forward,
Yes.
we
so-
have in every one of our meetings, we have a part for public comment. We have a part for director's report. We have a part for other business.
Right.
No, we don't. No other business.
Okay.
It's
And I
on my
want to go
agenda.
back, I think I want to go back to the hand raising if we would too. And then Commissioner, did you weigh in on that? I didn't see. whether you-
I did not put my hand up.
Okay. So, okay. And then I saw a sort of from Ben. Ben, do you have a comment to explain your sort of?
Only because the bylaws is only really what we've been focused on. So I think we're kind of getting trapped in nuance and spending a lot of brain and bandwidth on just nuance versus actually charging forward. And
Okay.
Grover, I'm sorry, but you're taking up a lot of space.
You're
If-
welcome.
Well, I think we all need to respect each other and our time. And if I had a timer for how much time we're all talking, you would be 10 times more than anybody else.
Ben, do you have a thought about how to proceed from here? Is that how would you like to use the time?
I really don't, to be honest. I
Okay.
thought we were just gonna, I kind of like the flow that was set and put forward where we were reviewing what staff had put into the effort,
Okay.
because they spend, they're with this daily and we're with this very minutely. So I appreciate kind of responding to what their thoughts are.
Okay.
And that's a very, very, to me, a productive way to move forward, because what's going on right now is not productive.
Okay, so we'll go back to the hand raising. That might help with listening to each other. So Ben wants to focus on on the work the staff has done on Article 3A. And Commissioner, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, the comment I wanted to make that maybe touches on all of this is we are all appointed for one purpose, reappointed for one purpose, for one task, and that is working on the new bylaws.
Yeah.
The existing bylaws are frankly irrelevant. I don't think they apply. So, and we're not doing anything that limits or uses or tests the bylaws in the first place. So that's why I think it's irrelevant.
Okay.
So, and I want to remind everyone who, well, all 6 of us were there in February, but when we crafted the selection process, it was under the understanding that we had CPOs out there that didn't exist and some that did. And we also had a challenge where we had limited amount of applicants would typically apply. So we designed the selection process accordingly with no sub-area map or discussion of a sub-area map. Now that's changed. And because that's changed, I think we need to focus our time on Section 3 with the concept of the sub-areas, because that's what we approved. That's where we're moving forward. And I think if we do that, I think we'll be in a good place and be constructive and go forward.
Okay, that's similar to what I think Ben is suggesting, and it's similar to what we had prepared. I'm hesitant to put the draft up. My sense is to come up with language that's really simple, and then if you need to make it more complicated, you can add to it. But that's what makes sense to me. Yes, Wilda.
As I said earlier this evening too, that's what makes sense for bylaws. Bylaws aren't everything you want to do, and you have to be cautious about what you put in bylaws, because what if you change committees, or what if you do other things? They aren't a program of work. They aren't specifics. They are the fundamentals of who sits on the board, how they get selected, and when they meet.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right. Okay. And so one thing to try is, if you put the bylaws, I'm gonna put them back up, and I'm going to read them. I'm going to just take a stab at reading them the way that I understood the votes you've taken. And so it's probably going to be simpler. I might miss something. That's okay. And let's just see what happens with that. So I'm going to start at 3A. And I'm just going to make it as simple as I think it could possibly be, and then you can build from there. The 11-member board representation will be as follows. 2 members from the city of Milwaukee, 8 members who are residents of unincorporated areas within the district, with 2 members each from 4 undefined unincorporated sub-areas, period. 1 member from a district community center advisory board, 1 non-voting liaison appointed by the board of directors. So comments on the simplification that I just made. I'm gonna take it down so I can see your hands more readily.
That seems sufficient for bylaws on that section. I mean,
okay, so maybe let's do that as a proposal. Wilda is saying what Chandra just read is sufficient for what we need in our bylaws. Straw poll, level of agreement with that. I see Grover. Okay,
and so
what's that?
I want to add a nuance to what you said. So
okay, so we're going to say that straw poll, yes, you're in agreement, and then go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that I think that's a good starting point. But if we need to come back to that basic and have some about how those folks are appointed, and if that's covered down below, I'm good.
Mhm.
and I'm willing to move forward. If we need to go back up a little bit and make sure everything gels and meshes together.
Okay. So I want to see if someone, I see you, Grover. I want to just check if somebody would, maybe, I don't know, Amy, someone who can wordsmith, can you write down what I just said, like put it in a screen that we could share if we need to?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and capture what you said, and
Okay.
you're gonna have to correct me because I know I didn't catch it all.
Okay.
I'll do that for
Well, yeah, and you could even, yeah, okay. Maybe if you draft it and just send it to me in an email, I'll look at it and we can keep going. Is that okay? Okay, so then we'll have that, we'll have it, you know, so that we don't forget. And so that Article 3A, you have a draft that you're tentatively agreeing to. I mean, and now I'm thinking about where to go next.
May I?
Oh, and Grover, you had your hand up. Okay, and then Wilda. Go ahead, Grover.
That's fine. I'm waiting to see what she writes, and all you changed was how the Milwaukee people were selected.
Well, she didn't change that. She just didn't state it. It hasn't come to,
That means she took it out.
it hasn't come
Yeah.
to selection of anyone yet. How,
Agreed.
Right.
But
I
she
took-
took it out of that statement, which did have it be in there, and now it's
Yeah.
not in there.
Okay, and that makes sense to wait till you see it again to comment. That makes sense. Okay. All right, and then Wilda, yes.
are you going to go on? Because I do have a comment on the alternate part, which is up on the
Yes.
board.
Okay, the alternate part. Let me pull it up so I can see what you're talking about. Screen share. Hold on a minute. Where'd it go? Sorry. Technology. Does the alternate part have a number to it? What were you
It's
saying?
just the end of that same
Right,
list.
just right below the, yeah, it must be.
Okay.
I don't know what's on what the staff wrote, but in the version that was sent out by the staff, it's just the next thing below it.
All right,
Yeah, well,
I can share it now, I think. Here we go. Here you go. Okay, there you go. So go ahead, Wilda. What was your comment?
Yeah, this is written a little bit differently than like what we've been working with in the past, but the city of Milwaukee is the only city of Milwaukee and the community centers, in this case, the Milwaukee Center, were the only ones that did appoint alternates. And we had some discussion about that, at least on the city side, not on the community center side, Joel. So I apologize for that. But we had some discussion about it, and we thought that if the other areas, that it didn't make any sense for us to have an alternate. And especially since the other areas didn't have alternates, that to be more fair and equitable, there shouldn't be any alternates. So.
Okay, and I'm not tracking because I don't see where there's alternates. Can you point me to the exact language you're talking about?
Right there in
Yeah,
the italics.
Yeah, it's italics.
Under 4.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Appoint a primary and an alternate representative as nominated, so blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And in the past, that was directed, and I don't know if it's supposed to be now too. It's asterisk, so it does go back to city and the community centers. And I don't know how the community center feels about that, but
I think the reason why we had the alternate, or we have an alternate currently with the Milwaukee Community Center, and I think it's important maybe to maintain here is the idea of that representation would be for all of the community centers that may or may not exist district wide. So say there's one at Concord or something like that, there's someone already alternate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but the city, I guess we could choose just not to do an alternate or whatever, but we just had discussion about that if the sub areas didn't have alternates, we didn't see where we needed to have that either.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll work between, I see you, Grover, between Amy and I will work on getting what I spoke drafted and then share it with you. But in the meantime, yes, Grover, go ahead.
Yes, on the subject of alternates, I'm glad you brought it up, Wilda. I really appreciated what Joel just said, the importance of had representation. And I actually would solve the problem exactly the opposite way. I would leave alternates, but put an asterisk and slightly change the wording so that the sub areas, because there's 2 representatives from each. And so there's an alternate, if both are missing, okay, that's a problem. But it's more likely only one would be missing. And so that there will be representation. I think both the Milwaukee group as well as the Milwaukee Center, as well as the 4 sub areas should each have an alternate.
Okay.
Yeah, and that would be, I mean, that's more equitable than just us having an alternate.
I agree. Thank you for that, Wilda.
Okay. So what I'd like to do at this point is invite you to just identify sections of the bylaws that you think this group ought to address before the submission for approval. So what other sections? And just if you raise your hand and then just identify them without discussion. Go ahead, Wilda.
I would just want to make sure that how at least Milwaukee's people are selected, that they've been selected by the city and they continue to be selected by the city. I'd want to make sure that's in there somewhere. If that's in a paragraph about selection, that's fine, but.
Okay, but you are saying you think it should be in the bylaws that they're selected by the city.
I think it would leave too many open questions if it didn't specify. Just like it says the board of directors will select their liaison, okay, and the community centers would be the ones to select the community center. I would think that that would still be important to them.
Okay.
That they would select that person. And if that means that the sub areas select theirs, you know.
Okay. All right. I've made a note of that and we'll put that in the draft for a proposal to revote on it.
Thank you, Wilda.
Yes. Okay. So other, just by raising your hands, if there are other areas of the bylaws you think it's important for this group to address as part of this process.
You mean like besides this section?
Yeah. Or anything we haven't addressed in this section, so B and so on, but just specifically what provisions, what sections do you think are important?
Well, I really like what everyone's saying with regard to, you know, Wilda made a great point. You know, if there's going to be alternates, then really everyone should have an opportunity. And if there's going to be a selection by the city, then every other sub area or group shall have. So if that's agreed upon, then you know, let's just say, let's just say, for example, that there is no sub area advisory committee, you know, to make the selection to the DAB, then we need to go to section 7. So when you ask the question, what's next to talk about, I think it might be section 7.
Okay.
Because they're so tied together. This whole issue is so tied together.
All right. So I'm going to break apart. You're answering the question about whether other sections, and I've noted that. And then you said it's all or none. Is there agreement about what the proposal that Commissioner made about alternates, that they're across the board? And maybe you want to say that so that people can check.
Yeah,
check it out.
I would say if I'm not suggesting that there are or are not alternates, I'm gonna leave that to everyone else. But if there's a consensus that there's alternates, then every sub area or group, Milwaukee Center sub area, everyone should have that same thing. I think, and then if there's the selection process, I mean, I'm just saying that everything should be equal.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to break that apart. Check this out by show of hands. So first question is there consensus that there should be alternates as part of the bylaws, that should be addressed?
May I ask a clarifying question first?
Of course.
I think it's a good idea, but the way you phrase that is there should be alternates.
Okay.
There may be an area that chooses not to select an alternate, and that should be left up to, whether it's the city or the community centers or one of the geographical areas. If they choose not to select an alternate, then that's on them.
Okay, so that there
Have
is an
the
option.
Maybe have the option to select an alternate.
Okay, so show of hands that should be an option.
I have a quick question before.
Oh, sure. I thought you were voting. Go ahead,
No,
Ben.
no, no. Well, I mean, some of this could come down to voting, right? So if we're voting or approving something and there isn't an alternate there and someone's sick and can't show up, in the bylaws, could you say that your other, like, let's just say that, you know, 2 people from area 1, one of them couldn't show up, that one person from area 1 say that other person in my group can vote for me.
A proxy.
Therefore,
Mhm.
Or
yeah,
a proxy vote.
sorry. Thank you. Right. Does that need to be part of the bylaws? I think that's important if we can't have an alternate.
And
proxy
because
votes are allowed.
because it's a legal committee of the county, I'm not sure we can do proxies
Oh,
or chain mail votes or things like that. There are some things on legal committees that you can't do.
okay.
Yeah, we
But
can
I
look
don't
at-
know that. I'm
Yeah,
just saying it's
we can
something we
certainly
would
look
need to
into that and
investigate.
maybe get an answer back the next time. As far as that language, you know, we could have it in there that a sub, you know, any group, city, you know, may choose to have alternates, the word may instead of shall.
Mhm.
And that is the word that could supplant the word option.
May, okay. All right, so whether the language is may or it's clear that it's an option, show of hands that you'd like that option to be present in the bylaws, that there are alternates. Yes, and yes, and okay, so yes, you all agree that there should be, they may have alternates. And all right, and then the next question is so now that you're saying that is an option, what's the level of support that all representation should have the ability to have option? And if someone has a better way of saying that, feel free, but
Have what?
What?
it's
What
all
we just,
it's all or nothing. So it's not specific to different areas. It's across the board. All
I thought that's what we just voted on.
Oh,
Me
okay,
too.
that's fine. If
Yeah.
that's the way it's, okay, so then that's done. All right, good. Okay, now, Commissioner said section 7. Other sections that you think are important for purposes of your October deadline?
Article 7 about
Yeah.
committees.
I think that was a selection on the selection committee.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Article 7A.
Yeah, there it is, committees.
Okay.
Okay,
We
All right.
added language at the very bottom, so if you look at that, that's where we left it, if you will.
okay. Others of you, are there other sections that you think are important to address as a group?
Well,
I see Deborah and Wilda.
Can you put that up? Because
Yeah.
I have an infinite number of versions, and I honestly don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
need to see what.
Okay, I've shared my screen, so we could just go through
7.
at the beginning.
No, 7.
Well, right, yes, I understand about 7, but what I'm asking is, are there sections, other sections that you also think need to be addressed in this process? So let's just check out each article. Article 1, is there more discussion? If there's more discussion, raise your hand if you would.
no.
I don't see any hands. If I'm missing anything, let
It's
me
missing
know.
a comma, but that's a minor thing.
Okay. Article 2, is that a section that this group needs to examine and address? I'm
I was
looking, I'm just,
mistaken. That was the one that needed the comma.
okay. And I don't see any hands on that. Okay, Article 3, we're in discussion about.
I didn't get a chance to see all of that last.
Oh, sure, okay.
So I
All right.
saw A and B, but I didn't see on my screen all of C. So
All right, can you see C now?
yes, I can.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So, and then Article 3, you've talked about A, and then this is B, C, D, and so on. So we'll just do B and C for the moment, or just do one at a time. B, more discussion?
So wait a minute. So this is the part that talks about how people are elected and or appointed and whatever. So
Yeah. And
so
section B,
B is fine. You know.
okay.
On C,
Yes, and Grover, if you would just say if you want to discuss it further, but without going into the content. So is C one that you want to discuss further?
well, this is different than what was sent out. So I'm scratching my head going, when did changes get made since the last few days?
Yeah,
All
so,
right.
what you have up here, and just because Grover has said it a couple times at least,
Yeah.
he's right. What you're putting up on the screen is not exactly what you sent out, so it looks different. So it's a little bit confusing.
Okay.
I've been going back and forth on my laptop, which is
Oh.
not easy to do.
Yep.
All right.
But so I would say that under C, that might need to be revisited, and maybe staff could put together a proposal. But when it talks about mid paragraph,
And so will you hold your comments? I'm just trying to get which sections you all want to address. And I also want to check out with Scott. I understood that there were changes to 3A, and that's because I suggested that, but none of the other sections were changed. But am I wrong about that, Scott?
That's correct. The only thing I'm wondering here is if people are looking at different versions. So let me just shed
Okay.
a little bit of light on that question.
Okay.
I think it
Okay.
goes to probably what Grover and Commissioner Savas have both said as well.
Okay.
I think this stems from the previous process before we paused for several months. There were a number of iterations of this document. I thought what we did prior to this meeting is send out what we believed was the most up-to-date version of the marked up version. We said red line, but we said that maybe that's not a good term to use. So whatever the term is, the marked up or annotated version, we sent that out to everybody. And I thought that's what we were looking at tonight, but I'm hearing people say that they think there's different versions than what we sent out. But I want to make it clear, staff has made no other changes to this document other than 3A, just to try to capture what we thought you had essentially agreed to at the last meeting. So we've not, you can even see the annotations are Aaron Ruff, which Aaron worked on this previously with the group, but that's been many months ago. So I'm not understanding what the different versions of this that people might be looking at. And I'm not suggesting that there aren't different versions, because there were a number of those that floated around back in, December, January, February. But we pulled up what we believed was the most recent version, and we just simply made the updated notes on 3A on top of the most recent version. So that, just to be clear on that.
Okay.
So could we just say that there are several of us that think we should come back to, at whatever point, and maybe it's next meeting, item C.
Yes, I've got that noted. Yep, 3C.
All right, thank you.
Yes. And I want to mention that I pulled this up. This is the version that was in the email today. So I think I only have one version in my possession. But in any case, now D. So next one is D. Anybody would like to discuss that one?
No.
Okay.
Yes,
Well, yes.
Deborah?
yes,
Okay, I'm going to mark it. All right. E. Anyone? Okay. F. You all don't want to get paid? Okay. G.
I think G needs to go away.
I think G needs to stay there.
All right.
I don't think that the county's going to provide liability insurance for one.
Okay, so I'm just going to say that's for discussion. And then we're
Okay.
going to Article 4, officers and staffing.
Yeah, I want to work on, I think we need to refresh 4A.
Me as well.
Okay,
And that is a change. B has been restored and B was missing from the one that we last had. So I'm glad to see it's been restored.
okay.
Yeah, but what's not in there is the vice chair, and I still think there needs to be a vice chair.
Correct. That's the part I was actually referring to.
Yep,
Oh, okay.
I agree with that.
Okay, all right, I'm making a note of that. And then the secretary section, any discussion?
Nope.
Okay, how about C, Board of Directors Liaison?
I think we'd already determined that, so.
Yep.
Okay, and then there's this. Section.
Okay.
Any of the sections that are showing that you'd like to mark for discussion?
I have just on, I gotta find the letter for it because it doesn't show well. It's
Okay, let me
the
see.
terms of offices and it's down, it's on the very last 4 words of 4.
Term of office, that paragraph?
No, the word appointed that's highlighted right there.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'm just marking that section though. So it's the term of office section where you'd like to.
Correct, just the word that's appointed. That's why there's a note.
Yep, got it. Okay. Vacancies? Anyone? And if I'm
That's the
going
section
to,
we're in.
right, if I'm going too fast, please tell me. I'm not hearing anyone.
Well, the same appointed issue is there on both
All
of
right.
them, both term of office and vacancies.
Okie doke. I've got that marked. All right. Next section is meetings.
I just
Not-
have a question about that,
Yeah.
about the league. Like if we determined we didn't have to have a meeting for some reason, I mean, I'm not that that would happen, but I'm just wondering if there should be other language. So perhaps we should come back to that one also.
Okay, got it. And then quorum and voting.
That looks
It all
fine.
makes sense.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Records.
That makes sense.
Okay. Article 6.
It's kind of standard
Mhm.
for.
Article 7.
I have something about the first line.
Okay, Article 7 is a yes.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Article 8.
Yes, definitely. Well, it depends on what you have there. That stuff down in the.
Can you pull
Yes,
it up a
all
little
that
higher?
green stuff.
Oh, that's as far as it goes. Can you not see that?
Can you pull it up a little higher?
I can't. That's as far as it goes. That's the end of the document, I think.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it stops
but-
there.
That's the
But
end of
I
the page.
definitely have issues about number 8.
Okay, and Wilda, are you unable to see that? See where the
I
cursor
can-
is?
You know, I realize now that it's the end of the document. That's fine.
Okay, and Grover, you said you have comments on 8, is that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okie doke. Okay, good. All right, well, I'm gonna stop share, just take a break from that. And any comments so far about that process? Did you all have enough time to, is there anything lingering about what you wanna address? Okay. And,
Scott's got his hand up.
oh, hi, Scott, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. I wanted to make sure that none of the DAC members had any comments or questions first. I wanted to circle back to something from earlier. I was trying to let the conversation finish there about what sections everybody wanted to review and that that discussion that just finished. But we kind of went over something, and I think we need to talk about the subcommittee or the sub area committees a little bit now. Chandra, help me. I don't want to pull us down into a rabbit hole and expend a bunch of time tonight, but I guess I'm just wanting to flag this issue potentially for discussion now, or potentially for discussion at a different meeting. So staff will need to understand, and I think we'll need further clarification from what the committee members are thinking. We don't have a mechanism in place today for any sub-area committees for the Park District. We have a DAB right now, or a DAC, and that is intended to represent the citizens of the district in some scope, and we're trying to define that and finalize how that works. So in the history of the district, we used to have sub areas with committees that actually were, I think, staffed by the Park District staff. This is my understanding of not having participated in that necessarily myself, but and those sub areas actually met almost, let me be careful how I use this, but almost like a CPO with different objectives. You know, CPOs have a different scope, but with the objective of meeting about the Park District specifically. And so the sub area reps would go to the committee meetings monthly or whatever the frequency, and then they would come back to the DAB or whatever it's called meeting and report kind of back and forth, you know, to represent the area. And in fact, the sub area committees existed primarily, and not I don't think not only for this reason, but primarily because the district bonded by revenue bonds a certain amount of money in its early life, and said, we have this amount of money to go put some projects in place, and we want to put in a number of, you know, neighborhood facilities or whatever the case may be. So the sub areas kind of had a pseudo opportunity to decide how to spend the money in their area, and we spent that money. And we closed that book of, you know, some of that money was district-wide uses like the aquatic park and, you know, some regional or community-wide facilities, but some of it was in the neighborhood uses that the local sub-area committees, I believe, got to actually have influence or input on. And those of you that, some of you may have better understanding of this, but I'm just talking at a broad high level. We sort of closed that book, and then the DAB evolved over time, and we went away from the subcommittees. And now we're kind of going back to that term again, which I think is helpful in terms of how we're dispersing our representation around the district. But I just think it's a really important point for us to figure out at some level what we're talking about here, because that gets back into, you know, the staff right now has the capacity to provide staffing and research and resources. You know, I think we've even talked about it tonight. You know, we need to turn information around and give it to you before the meetings, and we want to do a good job of that. But if we're breaking that up into, now we've got a bigger DAB or DAC plus potentially 4 subcommittee meetings a month to direct, you know, to help facilitate and staff, then we're into a whole different level of, I can't commit the staffing level to that right now. We'd have to do some analysis. So I'm not sure what the implications have been or the suggestions have been. That's been discussed tonight, but we would need to understand that in a much more clear way, that if that's what we're talking about, unless that was tied to the CPOs, but then the CPOs doesn't work because those CPO boundaries are not what the sub-area boundaries are, and vice versa. So I raise this not as necessarily that I'm advocating for something or another, but I'm just simply saying, if we're talking about reforming sub-areas and having committees of those sub-areas, which then need to meet, that's a lot of work, and that's a lot of time, and there's a real staff cost to that, and there's you know, district resources that have to be spent if that's what's being proposed. And I don't know that that's what was intended.
Okay.
So I want to just put that out, that it, you know, staff would need to make sure that we were clear about what that meant before we put something in the bylaws. And potentially we would need to examine the costs of that, or the impact to the district of doing that, and what we could or could not do. So I just throw that out to the group for your thoughts and consideration. And Chandra, again, mean to pull us backwards here, but you feel free how you want to lead that part of the, conversation.
Okay. So I want to just, so I want to pause there. I want to note the time. I'd like to shift to, I see Commissioner Savas. I think we have to shift to have some time for public questions. Is now a good time to do that?
Do you want to do that in the middle of this, or do you want to?
I do.
I think that we could continue this discussion and take the last 10 minutes to see if there's any public comment.
Okay. I prefer to do it now. I would prefer to have Commissioner Savas, if you have a comment, and then go to that, because then I'd like to have a full 20 minutes without that hanging to make sure.
And Ben had his hand up also.
Okay, so let's take 2 comments and then go to public questions. Oh, 3.
Deborah too.
All right. Well, okay.
So I first of all, I just want to say I kind of agree with Wilda as far as I think we could just take the public comment in the last 10. But the reason I raised my hand was I think Scott raised a very good point. I'm glad he did, and I think it's valid. And so in the discussions and mulling all of this over in the last few days, I think the idea possibly that there could be one joint sub-area committee or sub-areas that represent all 4. And when they go to do their appointment process, sub-area 1 members could caucus and select their person. In the meantime, they could do that. So staff would only have to serve or provide staff support for one sub-area committee if that became a financial question. And the other one came up is that maybe there's not a need. Maybe the sub-area could meet and not necessarily have staff support, but there should be some framework and minimum requirements for the sub-area that PGA might be able to work on. But I didn't want to jump ahead and put any other further thoughts in it unless there was some buy-in on that. And it sounds like just the way things are happening here in the last 3 days, that it's just people are just globbing onto the idea and like it. So I'm thinking it's quite apropos that Scott would bring that up. And I think there's a way of doing it that is not staff intensive in time.
All right. And then I think Ben and Deborah, did you have something? You're on mute, Ben.
Just unmuted myself. So I'll just piggyback on what Paul said and what Scott said. I agree on the intensity and the time commitment for the district and figuring out a way how to do it in a consolidated way. Whether it's, one person from each sub area or you utilize this meeting as part of that. So then there's not a district liaison at every single sub area meeting because that's a lot of time. I agree with that. That's all I got.
And Deborah, you had something?
Well, I think that we need to go back maybe in the future, maybe the next board, to look at specifically park advisory committees like you have in Milwaukee, where the group is solely focused on park issues. And I'm not sure that we can do this for the current selection process, because first of all, Area 4 doesn't have any organized anything, as far as I know. But I think one of the things that I think has come up repeatedly in our meetings is we'd like to get some more diverse input on the board. We'd like to have a broader range of people. The CPOs that I'm aware of are not a diverse group. They just aren't. And in the future, and I think it has to be in the future, if we have park advisory committees in each of the subgroups, like Milwaukee has, then we can bring in a much broader range of people and get really get some grassroots input. And that's sort of where I'm going. And I don't know, if we can get there during this current bylaws discussion. It would be nice to know, before I forget, which is imminent, please send us out the version of what we've been talking about, because I really don't have it. And also, Scott, can you tell us, do we have applicants from all of the areas, and what does that look like?
So may I just pause? I think I actually do want to go to the comments. I know that there's some energy to not do that, but I would like to do that and then shift it to start to close the meeting and get answers to your question, Deborah, and proceed from there. Can we do that now?
You want us to hold any other comments then?
Yes,
or
yes, please.
responses?
Yes.
Okay, and Ellen, are you facilitating the public comments?
I am happy to do that. And we do have attendees, and if anyone would like to comment, if you would raise your hand, and we'll bring you in and let you talk for a couple of minutes. At this point, I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
And have you received any emails or other correspondence regarding tonight's
I have
meeting?
not received any emails or other correspondence.
Okay. Okay, no hands are raised. Okay.
No hands are raised.
All right, thank you. We've given the public an opportunity and that. So Scott was going to respond to that, and then I had my hand up about what we're
Yes.
talking about here.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
So, yeah.
Well, quickly, the answer is yes to Deborah's question. We do have, we did review our applicants. We have 22, I believe, and we verified with the newly proposed boundaries that we have at least 2 applicants from each of those areas. And in some of the areas, we have many more than that. And we have a list of how many from which sub area, if you want to see that, but for time, I don't know if we want to go through that tonight or a different time, but we did verify that we have enough applicants to fill all of the spots as has been proposed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I see Ben and Wilda.
Go ahead, Wilda.
Ben. Yeah, I just, as Deborah was talking, I was also thinking about the diversity areas that we want to be sure that we give attention to in the future. And I mean, I will just admit right up, I mean, I am an advocate of, utilizing the current selection process that we have for board members to get these new people or even returning people, on board. It certainly has worked so far. We've got good representation from the unincorporated area, and we have had, throughout the system. But I'm also wondering if one of the things that might be beneficial to the process, if we just go with the selection process as it currently is with government affairs people and NCPRD people, that we add the county, perhaps if we could, add the county's diversity manager to that group. It would be great to have her input on diversity, since we've all agreed that that's something that's really important to us.
Ben, did you have something?
Yeah, as far as the selection criteria, how do we weigh like the representation, like 2 people from each district versus like specific qualities that a person an applicant has. So let's just say you said you have 22 applicants. Let's say there's only 2 from sub area 1. One of them is a complete dud. I don't know. I'm just saying out there. How is the selection criteria set up where the district has the ability, or the selection committee has the ability to pick a really good qualified person that's going to bring clarity and efficiency to this process that's very complicated, versus bringing in someone just because they have a house in that sub area?
Good point. Looks like Commissioner Savas has a response to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, you raised a good point, Ben. I don't think we got to that point. I think originally the concept was, for example, that we would give someone, person of color, low income, disabled, we give them more weight, but we never actually determined what that weight would be. We never really determined what the criteria would all be. And it seems appropriate that we should, right? We absolutely should. But if we go to the sub area model, and I'm talking about the future, I'm talking about, because right now sub areas don't exist, or committees don't exist. But then I guess that would be the de facto, whatever we come up with under section 7, that would be the de facto model with the criteria that when we work on section 7, we create and we weight that and we put in that criteria, absent a sub area committee that would do that process for us anyhow. And it would just certainly kind of go around that. But we can't, we as NCPRD DAC can't tell the city of Milwaukee to do that, or we can't tell the community center to do it that way per se, unless we all want to agree across the board, everything being uniform, that we have the same kind of criteria.
I see Joel.
Sorry, I guess I don't know if this is what Ben was getting at, as far as if there's not a suitable applicant from a particular sub area, we aren't bound to fill that position necessarily either. I mean, the board would function with a vacancy, and maybe that just means we have to bolster recruitment in that particular area and in some way. Am I incorrect in assuming that? No, my point is, we're not looking just to get a warm body in the room. We're trying to get qualified people. So whether it's maybe there's a vacancy from the city of Milwaukee, or someone from the community centers, whatever the case may be, we're not bound simply to fill that position just to have a breathing person in the room.
Well, maybe that's something we put into section 7, that in the absence of a representative or applicant, that there's some kind of method. If it's from the city, that it comes from the city. If it's from a sub area that's unincorporated, it comes from unincorporated nearby, or something like that.
I see Grover, and there is a hand raised in the attendees. I don't know if you want to do that now or at the end.
They missed their public comment, didn't they?
They did miss the public comment, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I want to remind us that what we're looking at is having to start from scratch a staggered process. So, and it's a 4-year term. And so we're going to have to figure out how those get staggered across there. So there'll be a number of people in the first cycle who will only be on for a year. And then. So there's a lot of room to work out these things. And I really appreciate the focus on diversity and the like. What I'm most concerned is in the moment, getting started and having equity in a proportional sense, after a lot of people have been concerned that it hasn't been that way. I'm not here to argue that it has or hasn't, but there are a lot of people who have significant concerns about that. So there is nothing sacrosanct that the application process is closed. So that's the end of that. And there's nowhere to go. If we don't have enough people, we could, for a particular area, open up for additional people. Because case in point, the task force for Concord, they opened up and added more, and opened up and added more. So there is lots of options. That's my point.
Okay.
I agree with you. And I think for expedience sake, we should find a path to just get the new people on board, get the 11 people gathered together to do the work of the district. And as a part of that, maybe they can refine some of these other areas of the bylaws in more detail. And I still think that if we do that and we use the current system of, or even with a couple of tweaks of selection committee, that it would possibly be good to have the county's diversity manager in the room while those are going on. I mean, obviously we can't speak for her and her time, but it just seems like that's relevant.
So
And just,
to answer
I'm
back
sorry,
to that-
Grover, I just want to note the time, and I want to maybe
noticed.
take if we could take your comment and then start talking about preparing for the next meeting and closing.
Okay, thank you, Wilda, for that, and I appreciate it. And I want to include the people who need to be there in the selection process. But I want you to know I represent a group of people, and there's hundreds of them who have signed petitions specifically are concerned about how representation is provided for the unincorporated. And many people have been significantly disappointed in how things have been before. Whether they're accurate in their assessment or not is not me to say. But I do think it is critically important that we have 3 functioning CPOs. And yes, they are not the most completely diverse groups, but we need to get people on the court who do represent the broader sections. And 3 of the 4 sub areas have functioning and applicants within their area that they could help choose who they are. And if, like whoever said duds or whatever, if you have holes, however you get the holes, people decline, then you could open it up to have additional access for that particular area moving forward.
Okay, we're
All wanted to
just,
speak.
yes, I see that. Okay, so if you would, and then we'll end the discussion there. So yes.
Yeah, so there's one thing that someone said, and then similar to what staff even said, and we're going to get back to our charge. So I think that if we, not tonight, but if we can come in the next week or so to agreement on whether or not and how we start the recruitment process or the interview process. If we can do that, then we're gonna have to go before the Board of Commissioners to get the permission to do that, because that's not what we were tasked to do.
Right.
So, and that's why I was hoping that the city of Milwaukee, if we could come to that piece, and that's included in whatever comes before the city council the 3rd Tuesday, and the board can be convinced that we all agree and the city agrees on whatever that is, then we're fine. But and that's kind of on me, because I broached it last week, and I thought we all agreed that we want to get the DAB back informed, and so it's all with all good intent. But we do need permission to actually start recruiting or interviewing people.
For interviewing, right? Interviewing and selection, right?
Right, and we're going to have to agree on it.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to hold exploring that to the next meeting, Commissioner? Okay.
Mhm.
We're not there yet. I don't think
Yeah.
I think we're gonna hash this out tonight.
No.
But,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. But maybe just a quick show of hands that you would like to focus on that discussion next meeting. Is that
Well, I think
what you would
I think
like to
we
do?
need to. We've got to
Okay.
get, that's an integral piece,
Okay.
I think.
Others, will you just show of hands that you're supportive of that or not? Okay. Okay, good. All right. And so as you close this meeting tonight, focusing on the bylaws, I would like you to think about what requests you have of staff between now and the next meeting. It sounds like one request Deborah made is to get a version of the bylaws that's the most current markup. So you're all reading the same one. And
Could that include tonight's?
okay. And yes, and it would include tonight Article 3A. Is that what you're saying?
And any of the things we've resolved this evening?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers offhand.
Right. Okay. And that next meeting, you would start to address your comments on the other sections where you do have comments. I'd like to suggest that you prepare those ahead of time, that you come with proposed language that you want the group to consider, rather than a lot of, because it might be that there's 1 or 2 people that has a proposed change and others are sort of okay with the way it is. So just a request that you come with proposals and even share them with staff ahead of time if you want. Any comments on that? And I saw Grover's hand.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I do.
Paul.
I do as well. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Paul.
Oh, I was going to say what we did, Chandra, at the last few meetings,
Yeah.
February back, is we had one of the staff, I forgot which staff person did it, but we actually had someone that was live typing and editing the bylaws as we were going, so we could see what was being written. But again, we were in a room pre-COVID up on the screen, so I'm not sure how we do that. I'm hoping it's possible that we can do a screen share with live changes. I'm not sure if the technology allows that. I haven't tried that, but that would be nice. That would help us see, hear, understand how the changes are being made and what they look like.
I know our facilitator in the Prosperity Project for the Milwaukee Design Lab, Brent, does that as we're working through. He tracks all of our notes and suggestions and everything under each section of what we're working on. So it can be done. It's just, I think we need to also keep in mind our staff time and, you know, the capabilities that we have through the county, but especially, you know, I'm especially concerned about staff time. So.
Yeah. And I just want to, the last thing I want to say, because we do have a little bit of time, and I'm a public involvement person, but there is a hand up, and if we've got a minute or two to listen to that person, I think it'd be a good idea to take the comment.
I agree, and I'll be fast with my one piece. I just want to make sure that with all this discussion, we haven't lost track that we're still going to be one district, and we still have to have the BCC do away with the zones so that we are one district. The representation comes from around the district, but we all look at the one single district. And lastly, when you went through all the examples, the note at the very top was there needs to be a preamble that identifies and speaks to, and we sent a copy of that, what the voters voted for to make this district happen at all. And we skipped right over that. So I'd like to make sure that's one of the tagged items, and that's it for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that you want to bring that back. I would say that that's not the kind of language that generally belongs in bylaws, but it could certainly be added as a reference piece to the bylaws. All right, there's probably a term for that, but I don't know what that is.
Okay.
And then, but before we get to the end of this meeting or call on a person I know who it is in the audience, I do want to make sure that we come back to what I mentioned in the very beginning of this meeting about my time conflict on the 21st.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay, so you had proposed that, is it the 21st? You would like to start the meeting at what time?
I could start it at 6:30. I could be here. I could probably be here at 6:20, but let's just say 6:30, you know, if that works for the others. Or, I mean, maybe we wouldn't need to meet. Maybe we resolve everything next week, which would be great.
I like the way you think.
You know, so that's our job, is to resolve everything by next week. But I take it too that we do have another Wednesday in there. Did I hear you say, Paul, that so that would be the, what, 28th? Or something like that. You're muted, Paul.
Yeah. The way I recall it is we had until October 31st to deliver our work. So I don't think that we had anything. I can't recall anything that said we had to present it to them by October 27th or 6th or whatever the day is.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I think if we need it, it's there. And so is an extra hour if we need it. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do, and I'm hoping that you all do too. I'm actually going to commit to actually crafting some suggested language to help expedite this.
Good.
And if we can all maybe do that in certain areas, those who are interested, and maybe the other idea is to have legal counsel with us to help, you know, some staff of ours from legal counsel help us through that. Make sure that they're thinking, they're going to have ideas and make sure that what's legal, what's not, and they're better at this kind of thing than we are.
Well, that's true. It would be good to have legal counsel's opinion. I'm just a little concerned about everybody providing their own version of how the different parts of the bylaws should read. If you'll recall, way back in the beginning of this process, that's what we did, and it was the most confusing thing ever. You know, and there are some who want to craft certain sections of the areas that we have discussed and said, yes, we want to talk about. Keep it as simple as possible, because bylaws should not have superfluous information in there or things that you can't hold the organization to. It's got to be, the KISS thing, keep it simple, and that.
Okay.
So let me see if,
I
We
see,
have a comment.
yeah,
yeah.
Jan still has her hand
okay.
up.
And I see Amy, and then did you want to check and see about the 21st? You guys, does that work to have the
We'll
6th?
need- yeah, I'd like to know what people think, or should we maybe add an hour to next week and then see where we get? Or I think we've got some options here, and I apologize that this conflict
okay.
came up. I did not expect this when we first decided on these meeting dates. So
You want to
6:30
decide at the
8:30
next?
Works.
Okay. Okay, 6:30 work for everyone?
Till 8:30.
Till 8:30,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
All right, let's do
All right.
that. Okay, and now to
Okay.
the comment, is that right? The question?
Yep.
It's in the chat box.
Yeah, okay, I'll read it. Could you
Yeah.
all identify what you consider to be qualified candidates and potential weighing for diversity, even if the selection committee were primarily the staff? What are the selection criteria?
Well, I only, other than what we put together with diversity and weighting those, the only other thing that I think that historically with the NCPRD in my 10 years has been problematic to some degree has been that, and I won't mention anyone's name, but we had an issue with in the unincorporated area, I want to qualify that, where the person that was representing an area was not responsive and engaging the CPOs or the community in any which way. And I think that's got to be to me, that ranks really high. I mean, even as a commissioner, when I'm involved in any kind of interviews, I really look to see how much people are really engaged in their community, and they've got a track record of engagement, and they're involved and they're reaching out. That ought to be weighted as well, because frankly, that's what Chair Bernard and all of us have kind of said. Chair Bernard was probably the most specific about that, is that not only should there be areas where people are representing the area, but they are actually connected and actually doing just that. So I think it's imperative that whoever's on the DAB is really going out of their way. And I think the sub areas, if they're formed and if they're there, would help ensure that. But that's got to be a criteria.
Right.
Hmm.
Any other comments before Chair Parks closes the meeting?
yeah, and do we have somewhere still a list of those items of diversity that we felt were important? I think if staff could provide those to us, we can at least look at them and say, well, we're missing this or missing that or whatever. And I think Paul's comment about being already involved in your community is really important. Should be somebody that, if you say their name, somebody should recognize them, I guess, would be a way to look at that.
And I see Amy.
Okay.
I just have one quick little thing. I wanted to say, if the committee members are going to commit to reading the whole bylaws document between now and next week and making some proposals, I'd really encourage you to be thinking about, for the changes you're suggesting, what's the underlying interest? What are the needs that you're meeting? And if you can think about it that way, then we can be maybe a little bit more creative in thinking about what the solutions are going to be that you can all agree to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, simple solutions.
Yeah, and on that, I was thinking, Amy, and everyone, that we already kind of made changes tonight, right?
Yes.
So whatever, Chandra, you were doing a great job there. If you could take that simplification you did under 3 and embed that in there and remove the other language or do strikeouts.
Yeah.
And make sure that we all are working from the same copy. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that we can get them in advance.
Like we said just a few minutes ago, like what was said, to make sure that we're all looking at what is the most current pieces of information. And
Yes.
keeping in mind, you guys, you may have to use part of your weekend to do this, because we have a small staff and they have a variety of other things to do too. This isn't their only function. I realize it's a very important function, very vital function, but I want to be sensitive to staff's needs also. And so it could be the end of the week before they can get a document back out to us. So just keep that in mind. That may be part of your weekend fun reading.
Good. So we're going to get a copy before the next meeting, and we're going to get a copy of those maps that got changed before the next
But that's
meeting,
what we've been
correct?
talking about, right? Is getting something that we can look at before the meeting of next.
Correct. I just
Am
want
I,
to clarify.
not remembering that correctly?
No, right. And
right.
to Willa's point, before the weekend.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the weekend is when you can read it.
Exactly. Thank you, Wilda.
Okay. Joel, do you have your hand up?
Well, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm on a bit of a delay here, but I know we weren't setting direct criteria as far as how we, going back to the comment and what Paul had said, and then what you had jumped in with, Wilda, and I just thinking while I was listening, while it's important maybe to find someone that, you know, you say their name and someone knows it, I think it's just as important to seek out someone that's just truly vested in their community. And I think we'll find more diversity in people we don't know of. I'm making assumptions, but I'm not making assumptions personally to you, but I do think that's a valid point that I don't think someone needs to be well known particularly. Sometimes fresh ideas are the most valuable ones, and it's certainly the basis for all diversity of opinion, regardless of identity. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there so I could sleep better tonight. That was
No,
all.
I'm glad you did. Thank you. I think it's a very valid point, and I'm certainly willing to accept that point of view, because I think you're right. But I guess I was just thinking of somebody that at least has some connection with the community in some way. They might not remember who we are, but you know. Yeah. Okay.
Right. But the issue that
Scott?
goes with that is who's doing the selection, and did the applicants actually give criteria that lets it be known about their diversity? I don't think that was on the application.
It
Well, that's
probably
something that would
wasn't.
be
That's
not-
where the in-person interview, I think, is going to be important. Yeah.
And
Okay.
who's
And
doing it?
Scott, do you have any director comments before we wrap this up? Okay, we're all good. We're all going to be here next week, 5 o'clock. The week after that, we're at 6:30. But we won't need that week after because we'll finish, right?
I like the way you think.
Optimism. All right, you guys, thank you so much. I appreciate staff. Thank you. Thank you, members. I appreciate, and all those in the audience, thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate it. Thank you. See you guys later.